Morning, everybody. Turn to 2 Samuel chapter 11. Today, we get to talk about one of the most well-known accounts in all of the Bible. So last week was just a standalone with Easter. Now we're back on with it. So across all of our environments today, kids and students are learning about David and Bathsheba today. They're learning about it in different age-appropriate ways, but they are learning about it all together. Up until this point in the storyline, King David is this sense of relief. I don't know if you have these moments when you read through the Bible. This is one of the benefits of like a through the Bible in a year plan, is there are some times of tension that build as the story progresses, and then the tension will release, and then it builds up again until it releases again. This is one of those release moments because we've come out of the era of the judges, which is ridiculousness on behalf of the nation of Israel as they're faithful for a time, and God blesses and it all goes well. And then they'll decide, oh, things are going well. Let's start worshiping all the false gods. So they do. And then God will send in a foreign invading army and will enslave them, subjugate them, try to oppress them, even take out all their crops, and you do all these horrific things. And sometimes it's decades before Israel will cry out to God for help. You would think that maybe they've learned their lesson. Hey, last time, as soon as we called out for help, God answered. So maybe instead of waiting 40 years, let's just wait a couple of hours. And this is terrible. Let's ask God, because God is so gracious and merciful, and he answers every time. And he'll raise up a judge, and the judge will lead Israel into battle, and they'll be saved. It's all good, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then the people cry out for a king. And they get King Saul, chosen because he's tall and handsome, not because he's qualified. He was never qualified. And because the scriptures twice mention his height and his good looks. So he becomes king, and things at first are good. They want a king so that we can be like all the other nations. And Samuel's just horrified at all of that. And God says, don't worry about it. They're rejecting me, not you. And they reject God as their king. They want a physical king in front of them, an in-person ruler. And it doesn't take long for Saul to blow it. Because the hope is that he's going to be this savior. Because the era of the judges didn't work out well for Israel. But if we have a king, this is a better solution. This is a new idea. If this works, we're good. So we've got the king. He's tall. He's good looking. He looks kingly. This is going to be great. And then it's not at all, because he blows it tremendously. And the back number of years of Saul's reign are just a joke. He's chasing David, trying to kill David. He's showing how delicate his ego is, how sensitive he is to kill, attempt to kill David. He even tries to kill his own son. And then it all ends poorly with Saul and Jonathan and his sons dying on the battlefield. And now David is king. He's already been anointed. He rules over Judah and then eventually over all of the nation. So there's this sense of, okay, finally. We've got a good one. It's going to go well. God's going to bless. As a nation, we do this every 4 years. Every 4. Sometimes 8. But typically every 4. Like, oh, this one's it. This one's the solution to the problem. We're going to usher in a new era, and it's going to be the golden age of America. And it takes about 30 seconds for us to realize, nope, this is not the answer to any of our problems. And they do this now with David. And if there's someone that could be this, it is David. He's the man after God's own heart. He's pursuing God. He wants to honor God. And therefore, do all that would bless the nation. That's the whole point. I mean, and David is a likable guy. He's the sweet psalmist of Israel. So he's got all these psalms. He's a fierce warrior on the battlefield. I mean, he's got it all. This is the man. He's got all these mighty men around him whose exploits are absolutely incredible. Killing hundreds and hundreds of guys, against one. I mean, they're incredible with what they do. He's honorable. He loves the nation, pursues the blessing of the nation. But then it doesn't take long for it to all come crashing down. Because there is a sense of a bit of a peaceful golden age for Israel. The true golden age will come under his son Solomon. That's coming. But the nation expands and grows. Jerusalem gets expanded. I mean, the nation becomes a global powerhouse under David. Fully established under Solomon, but now he doesn't lose. David doesn't lose. He goes battle after battle after battle after battle, and God's providing the victory over and over and over again. And it doesn't necessarily go to his head. He finds out that one of Jonathan's sons is alive, Mephibosheth. He's crippled in his legs, and he cares for him. I mean, we just like this guy. And very quickly into his reign, we have an incident that happens in chapter 11 and chapter 12 of what's going down with David. So let's just start the section and go to some of the context. Verse 1 of 2 Samuel 11. Now it happened in the spring, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed at Jerusalem. That's the problem right there that caused all the other problems. David is somewhere he's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be on the battlefield. David's a warrior. He's the king. He's supposed to be leading the military. Yes, Joab is the famed military general, and he's tough, and he can get it, but it's the king that leads into battle as the representative of God to the nation and the representative of the nation to the enemy. In the spring, at the time when kings go out to battle. This was an annual thing. The weather turns. Who are we going to fight? Let's go. I mean, what an odd thing. That's not necessarily what we do. All right, guys, it's spring. Who votes Canada? We're going to go to battle and fight now. So that's what they do, and they've got the Ammonites, certainly, that have been this recurring enemy for them. But David stayed at Jerusalem. David's at home. He's not supposed to be at home. The sense of isolation that people bring onto themselves invites sin. So there's an acronym, and I've talked about it before in different environments. I don't remember when or where, so we'll just talk about it again. There's an acronym for when you are more susceptible to temptation. Because, again, not all temptation is created equal. Sometimes you are more open to it than other times. And the acronym is SHOUT, like thou shalt not. So here's when you are more open. When you are single, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Which, I don't know about you, that's most days. Single, when you are by yourself, hungry, angry, and you can combine those into hangry. Lonely, you're not isolated, but it feels like you're alone even in the midst of a crowd. And when you're tired. When you are in one of those places, you are more susceptible to temptation. It is easier for you to fall. So David is in this sense of isolation. He's alone when he shouldn't be alone. And that's very dangerous. For years and years, still to this day, but years and years and years, I don't travel alone, ever, especially if it's far. That's not smart. I don't do that. I don't stay in hotel rooms alone. I travel with friends or family because it's just foolish to put yourself in a scenario where you're by yourself, and if you do something, no one knows. So that's where David is at right now. Verse 2. Now when evening came, you kind of get the sense that this is day one of his time alone. When evening came, David arose from his bed and walked around on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So the king's house, higher in the city than everybody else's house. I mean, it's this projection of power and importance. You know, your house is above everybody else's. And he looks out over his domain, and he sees this woman taking a bath. It was very common. This is what people did. They took baths on their roof. It's nice and cool out there. It's in the sun if it needs to be in the sun. That's how water heated up. They don't have hot water heaters, so you set it on your flat roof in the sun, and then you can, when the sun goes down, you can have a warm bath. So Bathsheba is doing nothing wrong by taking a bath on her roof. If you do it, it's wrong. She's in a different historical context with different practices. If you start doing this kind of stuff, we're going to have talks, and the elders are going to call you in. And she's very beautiful in appearance. Verse 3, so David sent and inquired about the woman. Mistake number 2. Ooh, I like what I see. I wonder who that is. Asked about her, and one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? When you read the end of David's life and the list of his mighty men, he has a little over 30 men who they're not just the generals, some of them are. They're his personal guard. These are the most elite soldiers in Israel. They go on the different exploits that no one else gets sent on. They are his closest companions. Uriah the Hittite is on the list. So it's not like he doesn't now know who this is. So he sees this woman apparently from a distance and doesn't know who she is. Who is she? It's the wife of Uriah the Hittite. You know, one of your closest friends. Verse 4. Then David sent messengers and took her. And she came to him, and he lay with her. And when she had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. Yeah.
How does she purify herself?
Timing, so the Old Testament law, there are some bathings to do, there is some sacrifices to offer, there's time involved. So she has been defiled, and she needs to be ceremonially purified. It's a religious practice, she's not disinfecting anything. So yeah, it's a religious purification. She can't go and worship because of this defilement. So she hangs out there. So David abuses his power. He does this because he can. I personally, I would not use that word. And there are many who do. I think that's imposing a modern phenomenon on an ancient culture. Things are different then. So now post-Me Too movement, we look at this and go, oh, rape, and we lay out this big, huge case. I wouldn't argue that was necessarily the case. This was common. It shouldn't have been.
Right, but she had no choice.
She did not have a choice in this. He's the king. He can do whatever he wants. Absolutely the case. Which I think the language of sent and took her certainly implies some of that. She doesn't have a choice in these things. Ancient cultures were utterly wicked, including Israel's. They're wicked. So, we don't dismiss what David did. We don't condone what David did. It was utterly evil. But to impose our words today on that would be, I think, unfair to what David has done.
You've got a evidently young woman. She's of childbearing age.
Sure.
You know that.
Yeah, we know that.
And her husband's been away.
Yep. Her husband's away fighting the battle in David's place,
Yes.
where he should be.
He's a warrior.
Yes.
So it's not like he's a 80-year-old guy.
Right.
He's young. He's viral.
Right.
She's been without for a while. I'll just put it that way.
Yep. We assume.
Well, unless there were other men.
Yeah. Sure.
But
Right.
that doesn't end that.
No. That's not in the text.
Might like, hey, this is a king. Woo.
Yep.
And he's,
Yep.
I don't think it's fair to, from what information I have, I don't think it's fair to say he's the one that's totally at fault.
I mean, we can argue it takes two to tango, that kind of thing. We can't forget he's the king. And the scriptures put no negative words on her whatsoever. The scriptures do not condemn her for this. It condemns him. So when God confronts the sin, he confronts David. He doesn't confront Bathsheba. That we have record of. Now, she has to endure the penalty, which we'll get to in a bit, just as David does. But there is a very real sense David has abused his authority because he's doing this because he can. He can get away with it, which is why it's so dangerous to be isolated when you're not supposed to be, and making these decisions. So, could it be that his power's gone to his head, that he's comfortable? I don't need to go out to battle. Again, a lot of that's implication that we're kind of placing onto the text. I think it's fair to say that, but again, we shouldn't speak to a lot of motives that the text doesn't speak to. But the fact of the matter is, he did this and should not have done this. She was not his wife. By this point, David has multiple wives. So it's not like he's already sexually pure. He's already violated God's commandments for doing all of this. All the kings did. And it got them in trouble every single time. Every single time to do all of that. Which is why the kings were commanded not to do that, but they did it anyway. So she heads back home. Verse 5, she becomes pregnant, sent and told David and said, I am pregnant. Well, now you're in trouble because what was secret is no longer secret. Everybody's going to know something's up. Uriah's been on the battlefield for a long time. And then she's pregnant. 2 plus 2 equals 4. People are going to put it together. And do you remember the punishment for adultery in Israel? They will stone her in the street. They'll kill her for this. David will have nothing happen to him. She'll be killed in the streets. So, David tries to cover it up. Notice his immediate response in verse 6. He sent to Joab saying, send me Uriah the Hittite. Bring him in from the battlefield. So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked concerning the state of Joab, the state of the people, and the state of the war, which is just ridiculous. Hey, Joab, how's it going out there? How's the battles? How's everybody doing? You okay? You all right? Feeling good? Feeling strong? All of it's pretense. Verse 8, then David said to Uriah, go down to your house, wash your feet, relax, hang out at home. You've been gone for a while. Uriah went out of the king's house, and a present from the king went out after him. But Uriah lay down at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord and did not go down to his house. This is a man of integrity, doesn't go home. And then they told David, Uriah did not go down to his house. David said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in booths, and my lord Joab and his servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house and to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? by your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing. What a good man. Then David said to Uriah, stay here today also. Tomorrow I'll send you out. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. Now David called him. He ate and drank before him, and he made him drunk. In the evening he went out to lie on his bed with his Lord's servants, but he did not go down to his house. Drunk Uriah has more integrity than sober David. He gets it right even when his faculties are not all there. This is a good, solid, godly, honorable man. Verse 14, now it happened in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. He had written in a letter saying, place Uriah in the front lines, the fiercest battle, and withdraw from him, so that he may be struck down and die. So David is now adding sin upon sin upon sin upon sin. He's done something he's not supposed to do. Now he has to cover it up because it's going to go public. It will happen. Because eventually she can't hide that anymore. And then there are very real consequences. So bring Uriah home, because if I can get Uriah into his house to sleep with his wife, all of this goes away. But it's now public knowledge he did not do that. Gets him drunk, tries again. It doesn't happen, so David pens a letter to his general that would not be opened by Uriah, because Uriah has the honor to not open that letter and peek inside, and he carries back with him to the battle his own death sentence. Send him wherever it's fiercest, send him to the front, and when the battle gets bad, withdraw, leave him alone, and make sure he dies on the battlefield. That erases at least one of the problems that David now has. Sends it home. Uriah goes down. Joab sends message back. This is what happened. Everything that you wanted to happen, it happened. So Uriah is now dead. Verse 26. Then the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, had died, so she lamented over her husband. Then the time of mourning passed by, and David sent and gathered her to his house, and she became his wife. Then she bore him a son. Got away with it. I did it. He's dead. He's not coming home. No one will know. And now David even maneuvers in this scenario. He looks like the good guy. Husband's dead. Well, I mean, he was one of my mighty men. So how could I do anything but bring her into my house and I'll make her one of my wives? See how kind I am? See how compassionate I am? See how merciful and generous I am? And no one knows anything. The last sentence of verse 27.
It says that she becomes one of his wives, so we know he's got more wives.
Oh, he's got more.
And concubines besides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got several.
All this is taking place.
Yep, got several. Yep. So he's already sleeping around by this point. She's nothing to him. Nothing. So think about it from that vantage point. He's walking on that roof. He sees her. She's good looking. And he gets all revved up. He's got hundreds of women at his disposal. And I use the word disposal on purpose because they're property to him. Multiple wives and all the concubines. He can have any of them. But he doesn't. He wants that one. Hence the problem. But the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of Yahweh. No one knows, but somebody's been watching the whole time. God sees, and he knows everything that David has done. So, chapter 12. Yahweh sent Nathan to David, the prophet. And he came to him and said, this is what I love. This is a great little parable that Nathan says to him. We need to pause and admire the courage of Nathan the prophet. My son is named after this man because of the courageous act. Nathan is sent by God to confront David. David has already killed one of his closest friends to cover up this sin. And David tells Nathan is now the only human in the world that knows of this sin, and goes to confront the man who's already killed to cover it up, and doesn't blink to go. So Uriah is not the only honorable good man. So is Nathan. And goes and lays out a parable. Verse 2, or the end of verse 1. There were two men in one city, the one rich, the other poor. The rich man had a great many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he bought and nourished. And it grew up together with him and his children. It would eat his morsel of bread and drink of his cup and lie in his bosom. It was like a daughter to him. Now a visitor came to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock or his own herd to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. Rather, he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. What a terrible story, speaking right to what you just brought up. Oh, David, let me tell you a story. There's a wealthy farmer. He's got thousands of animals, but then there's this poor guy. He's got just the one. It's like a child. I mean, he cuddles it at night. The things that you do with your dog and cat. He's cuddling it at night. It's playing with his kids. It drinks out of his own cup. Gross. Eats from his own table. I mean, this is part of his family. It's all he has. And the rich man has a guest. Well, I don't want to go kill an animal from my thousands upon thousands of animals. My neighbor has one. I'll take it and kill it to serve. He's got all the women in the world that he could ever want or need. He's got more than he could ever need, but apparently not as many as he would want. More than he could ever need. That guy has one, and I'm going to take it because I can. Verse 5, this is awesome. Then David's anger burned greatly against the man, and he said to Nathan, "As Yahweh lives, surely the man who has done this deserves to die, and he must make restitution for the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and had no compassion." That's right, David. Righteous anger. Be mad. As Yahweh lives, he deserves to die. You are totally correct. He does absolutely deserve to die for this grievous thing that he's done. Verse 7, Nathan then said to David, "You are the man." That's the moment where Nathan is at the most risk. It's you. Now, don't read this as you're the man. That's not what he's saying. You are that man. The one that you hate, the one that you're angry at, the one that you want to kill, it's you. Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, "It is I who anointed you king over Israel. It is I who delivered you from the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your care. And I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added to you many more things like these. Why have you despised the word of Yahweh by doing evil in his sight? You've struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, have taken his wife to be your wife, and you killed him with the sword of the sons of Ammon. You did this. You are that man. I gave you everything. All of it. So why would you despise that? And notice again, in the sight of Yahweh. Who's watching the whole time? You weren't alone when you thought that you were alone. It wasn't secret when you thought it was secret. He saw. He always sees. I gave you all of these things, but you decided it wasn't enough. How easy it is to look at somebody else's life. It's not hard to point out their sin at all, is it? I mean, you could create a list really fast. Oh, well, you do this, and you do this, and when you talk, you kind of do this, and I don't like the shows you watch on TV. I don't like the your YouTube stuff. I don't, and fill in the blank of all the sins that we can acknowledge when we look at someone else. It's a bit more difficult when you're looking in the mirror, isn't it? Even if you're hard on yourself, you won't see in your own life what you see in their life. Because all of us have a streak of hypocrisy in us. Because we dismiss our own sin. We justify our own sin. You can't do it, but I can. I mean, you don't understand. You don't understand how bad of a day that I've had. You don't understand how stressful it's been. If you knew what my parents did to me when I was a kid, if you knew all these things that happened 30 years ago, if you knew this, if you knew that, you would understand and let me get away with it. We always do that with us. We never do that with others. Because we want justice until we're talking about ourselves. We don't want justice anymore. We want mercy. Because if you just knew what I knew, then you would nod along that I was right in doing this. So David sees the sin clearly in another and is totally blind to his own sin until Nathan confronts him with it and lets him know this is what God has seen. So here are the consequences, verse 10. So now the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says Yahweh, behold, I will raise up evil against you from your own household. I will even take your wives from before your sight and give them to your companion, and he will lie with your wives in the sight of this sun. Indeed, you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. Then David said to Nathan, well, let's stop there. We'll read the rest in a bit. The sword shall never depart from your house. It's been relatively peaceful. It's going well for Israel. It's going well for David. But now there's going to be fights. The sword is not going to depart. You've ruined it. So now here are the consequences. There's going to be internal fights and battles, and it gets ugly, right? Not only are there battles to come for the nation, David's own son will rebel against him. Absalom is the fulfillment of this curse on David's life now. Your own son is going to take up the sword against you. David has to flee for his life, go on the run even from his own son. And verse 11, I will even take your wives and give them to your companion. He'll lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. So his companion turns out to be his son. It's Absalom. So when David flees for his life out of the city at Absalom's rebellion, he leaves 10 of his wives back to care for the palace while he leaves. And when Absalom comes into the city, he is counseled, here's what you need to do to establish your power over your dad. He's got 10 women here. Go up onto the roof in the sight of all Israel and sleep with all 10. And he did. In the sight of the sun, Absalom does exactly what God says is going to happen. This has been done all secretly. God says, I'm going to do it out in the open. Your punishment will be public for all of this. So I imagine, because we read when David flees from Absalom, when he finally realizes my life's in danger and he has to leave the city, leave the palace. He's got his head covered, his head down, walking up the Mount of Olives to get out of the city. It's not going well for David in that moment. Do you think part of his distress were these words echoing in his brain? I bet they were, because this is now happening, because God will do everything that he says he will do. Verse 13. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against Yahweh. It's an understatement. He did. Of course he did. Read Psalm 51. Later, Psalm 51 is the psalm that David writes after confronted by Nathan. It's a great psalm. Nathan said to David, Yahweh also has taken away your sin, and you shall not die. However, because by this deed you've given occasion to the enemies of Yahweh to blaspheme, The son also that is born to you shall surely die. And Nathan went to his house. There are consequences. Absalom, the death of his son, there are consequences for sin. But look at God's grace in the middle of it. Because what does David deserve? By his own mouth, what does he deserve? The man who does such a thing deserves to die. Justice would demand that God kill David immediately. And he doesn't. He lets him live. He's taken away your sin. You shall not die. Friends, that's the power of grace. Even in the midst of our foolishness, even in the midst of our sin, when we cry out, I've sinned, this is his response. He forgives. He grants mercy. He doesn't always remove the consequences of your sin. It would be nice if he did, but he doesn't. Sometimes we need to experience the very real earthly consequence of our sin. It's the only way to learn a lesson. But God takes away the eternal punishment that belonged to David and forgives him. What an incredible, incredible account. And then as you keep going, and we're going to stop there, but as you keep going into all of this, you remember God had made in chapter 7 the promise of the eternal king. Your line, someone's going to sit on your throne forever. Well, that ultimately is fulfilled in the Lord Jesus. But first and foremost, that's Solomon. He's got a lot of sons. Solomon is not the oldest, doesn't necessarily have the firstborn right to sit on that throne, because God has said your son Solomon will be the one to take your place. Solomon is the next child born to David and Bathsheba. So God takes all of this tragedy, all of this death, all of this sin, he takes it all and completely turns it for the good of his people and the good of all of Israel. And Solomon is born to them, who will eventually sit on the throne. And it's under Solomon that Israel will experience its longest period of peace and its true golden era. The child of David and Bathsheba. This is how gracious our God is, that he would do things like that. So, we got a couple minutes. Thoughts, questions,
Yes.
general musings about life.
Is there any hint as to why David chose to stay home this time?
No, there's not. Nope. The text just doesn't tell us, so we kind of impose that. Is he too comfortable? He's been really successful. Again, did power go to his head? I don't have to go anymore. I'll let those guys go and fight for me. What was it that led to that? And you've heard me talk about it before. There's a great book by Robert Clinton called The Making of a Leader. He's the one who says 70% of leaders fall in some way before the finish line. And he starts with the study of Scripture. 70% of all leaders fail in maintaining faithfulness to God before they die. And then that's been true historically as well. 70% of leaders fall in some way before they cross the finish line. The shocking part of the book isn't necessarily the 70%, though that's a big number. The shocking part is the older they get, the more likely they are to fall. Because that's counterintuitive. You'd think that the older, more experienced, wizened, seasoned veteran would be less likely to do something stupid. They're actually more likely because they've experienced success, things are going well, and they relax. And before they know it, boom, something comes and ruins it all. And so they've let down their guard for whatever reason. Comfort, arrogance, whatever it might be. I would argue that's probably what's happening to David. He's been king for a while. He's been very successful. He's beloved. He just lets down his guard. And this happens. So this is what happens when you let down your guard. Satan is really good at what he does. He's been doing it since Genesis 3. You can't shrug your shoulders at him as if, no, I'm immune to that. You aren't. Don't let down the guard. Because when you do, this is the kind of stuff that happens. Without intention. David didn't wake up that day and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to blow up my life and kingdom. I'm going to ruin it all, and I'm going to ensure that my legacy forever has an asterisk next to my name. He does not do that. He wasn't expecting that when he was walking out on his porch that night. But that's what happened. Yeah.
It seems like that Joab and the fighting men did see the sin. I think something was up.
Yep.
So they had to see that God allowed it.
Yep.
And I also almost think that the consequences David suffered would be worse than death. These sons
Yeah.
died, his daughter getting raped, just all that,
Yep.
shame. Seems worse than death.
Yeah, Absalom is just one example of the sword that doesn't depart from his house, right? David's daughter is raped, that would be the right word to use, by one of David's other sons, by a different mother, and Absalom kills that son. That's why Absalom flees and gathers the people to march back home to take the throne, because of how all that goes down. Multiple sons die, the daughter raped, and is childless until she dies. She's a perpetual widow. If God would have just struck him dead immediately, though that's what he deserves, but this is far worse. He has to live with these consequences the rest of his days. So Joab knows. The one who, when David's walking on the roof and he says, "Who is that? Go get her for me." That guy knows. So there are people who knew, but you don't question the king. That's how you get killed. You don't question the king. Which Bathsheba, you don't question the king. You do what he tells you to do. It's just how it goes with all of that. And he really blew it. He had a good thing going and blew it. How common is that? To have such a good thing going, then you blow it. Yeah. Anything else before we head out of here? Yeah.
We hear about David's, 3 wives? We don't hear about the other, 7 or whatever?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, yeah.
A bunch of them. Was that all to conquer the surrounding? Were these other women
Yeah.
probably daughters of kingdom seed?
Many of them were, yes. Because we would know, some of them, we know nothing about them. We just know their name. That's about it. So they would have been done for specific military kingdom-type purposes, absolutely true. That's not true with Bathsheba, for sure. That's not true with Nabal's wife, Abigail. She becomes a wife after God strikes him dead. But the rest of them, we assume, would have been that. Solomon marries the princess of Egypt. I mean, that's explicitly committed. We don't unite with Egypt, ever. Remember what I saved you from Egypt? Remember? God commanded, don't even go to Egypt to get horses. He does that. He has them all shipped in. And he goes to Egypt to get a wife. But all that's done for the practical purposes of expanding the kingdom and alliances and all that. Just foolishness. They weren't supposed to do any of that, but they did. Yeah. All right, well, that's David and Bathsheba. Super fun story. Everybody's encouraged. So 1, 2, 3, go team. We'll see you.